everyone, and welcome back to the Split Decision. I'm Elias Blanco. Each week we look at the biggest headlines and fights throughout the past week in boxing. And what a way to come back to the studio. It's been about 2 weeks, but we have some jam-packed high-profile fights and some chaotic boxing news. So without further ado, let's get to the action. So it was Cinco de Mayo weekend, which means there's a Canelo Alvarez fight, and that's exactly what we got. On Saturday, the Undisputed Super-Middleweight champion faced Jaime Munguia. It is the first fellow Mexican Canelo has fought since Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. back in 2017. And just like 6 years ago, Canelo got the job done. Alvarez beat Munguia by unanimous decision, making defense number 4 of his undisputed titles at 168. The fight was high-paced with constant action throughout 12 rounds. Munguia started off strong, not only letting Canelo catch his breath, but throwing at a high volume. But in round 4, Canelo caught Munguia with a sneaky uppercut, knocking down Munguia for the first time in his career. From there on, Canelo's timing, power, and accuracy took over the fight. Alvarez improves to 61-2-2 and continues his dominant reign atop of 168. All right, and let's look at the rest of that Jaime Munguia-Canelo Alvarez fight card. We already talked about it. Canelo beat Jaime by unanimous decision to retain his undisputed super middleweight titles. In the co-main event, Mario Barrios retained his WBC interim welterweight title against Fabian Maidana. Now, with Terence Crawford moving up to 154, it's more than likely that Mario Barrios is going to be elevated to world champion. And honestly, that is very deserving because he's had a career resurgence since moving up to 147. Also on the card, Brandon Figueroa retained his WBC interim featherweight title, defeating Jesse Magdaleno, stopping him in the 9th round with a beautiful body shot. Listen, ever since moving up from super bantamweight, Figueroa has been a mainstay at featherweight. I think he's going to be a threat, and sooner or later he's going to get a world title shot. Also on that card, Imantas Stanionis makes his return after 2 years off, beating Gabriel Maestre, retaining his WBA welterweight title. Just like Mario Barrios, once Terence Crawford relinquishes his belt, Stanionis is going to be elevated up to world title status. And with that, I think he's going to be in the top 2 of that division because him and Boots are the best fighters in the division. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for Stanionis. And to kick off the card, Jesus Ramos beat Johan Gonzalez in the 9th round by TKO. I think he's going to be a dark horse at 154, and shout out Casa Grande, Arizona, because those are some dogs that come out of that region. So what's next for Canelo Alvarez? I mean, Saturday was a solid win for him and adds to his dominance to the division he's reigned over for almost 3 years. But we have to address the elephant in the room. A lot of people wanted to see David Benavidez in the ring rather than Jaime Munguia. And that is the fight to make at super middleweight and has been for a while now. But Canelo's defense is working overtime because now it seems like he's using his head movement outside of the ring too. He says this fight can only happen if the price is right, but that price tag is $200 million. So it is unlikely that this fight will be the next one for Canelo. With that being said, let's look at 2 names that are floating around that looks to be on the odds-on favorite to land this fight. The first option is WBC middleweight champion Jermall Charlo. The second option is Edgar Berlanga. Not the best possible option for fans, but they have name value and some credibility to make them some viable options. Right now, we are entering the stage in Canelo's career where he's more calculated and picky in who he chooses. I mean, he is a businessman right now. He's now trying to make the most money and limit the risk as he enters his mid-30s. We will just have to wait and see what happens next with Canelo Alvarez. All right, and let's take a look at the upcoming fights this week. Another jam-packed week of boxing happening this week. First, we start on Friday. Former unified super bantamweight champion Marlon Tapares is back in action, taking on Natapong Jenkao. This is going to be Tapales' first fight since losing those belts to Naoya Inoue. It will be interesting how he bounces back from this. Now on Saturday, over in South Korea, former 2-division world champion Hiroto Koriguchi will be fighting Vince Paris for the 2nd time. Now these guys fought back in 2018 where Koriguchi beat him, retaining his IBF mini flyweight title. I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. Koriguchi is one of my favorite fighters today, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to try to find a streaming service to watch that live. Also on Saturday, over in the UK, Jessica McCaskill will be defending her WBA welterweight title against Olympic gold medalist Lauren Price. This is Price's first opportunity at a world title. She is just coming off her gold medal performance at the Tokyo Olympics, undefeated, a very fundamental fighter. This is going to be a tough matchup for Jessica McCaskill. On that same card, Reese Edwards is going to be in action against Thomas Patrick Ward. Reese Edwards, undefeated. I'm looking forward to British prospects fighting. This is going to be a tough matchup because Thomas Patrick Ward is no slouch, so we'll see how he goes against this tough test. And then at night, on Saturday night, over in Australia, it's the big one. Vasily Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. for the vacant IBF lightweight title. This is going to be a banger. This might be Vasily Lomachenko's last shot at a world title at lightweight, and he's going into enemy territory over in Australia. For George Kambosos, he has a lot to prove. I mean, the last 3 performances have not been very impressive, so we're going to have to see how he faces against a technically skilled fighter in Vasily Lomachenko. But overall, this is a jam-packed week in boxing, and it's going to be a jam-packed summer in boxing. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. One of the most anticipated fights this year is set to crown an undisputed light heavyweight champion. Originally, Arthur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol were scheduled to fight on June 1st, but unfortunately that is no longer the case. It was reported Friday that the fight is postponed because Beterbiev suffered a torn meniscus. He is now scheduled to undergo surgery and will be out at least until September. As for Bivol, it is reported that he will now face Malik Zinad for the WBA title while Beterbiev recovers. This fight was scheduled on the same event as the Queensberry Matchroom 5-on-5, which will still take place. So it's another heartbreaking piece of news in a week where boxing news has been chaotic. I mean, we were only a month away from crowning an undisputed champ at 175. This was also a fight where on paper it was a tough one to call. I mean, both boxers are undefeated champions who are the clear number 1 and 2 at light heavyweight. The real question I have now after this is how Beterbiev's injury is going to affect his mobility in this fight, because we know Dmitry Bivol's movement and footwork is the bread and butter to his game plan. But how will Beterbiev work to stop those patterns coming off surgery? A lot of questions need to be answered, but I hope Arthur Beterbiev a quick recovery, and hopefully we can see this fight before the end of the year. So we usually don't talk about the circus here, but Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are set to get in the ring on July 20th, and I still can't believe this fight is happening. But what boggles my mind even more is the fact that this fight is now sanctioned. The fight will officially be a professionally sanctioned fight, meaning that this fight will count towards their record. This will be an 8-round fight with 2 minutes each in the heavyweight division. The 2 fighters will also be fighting with 14-ounce gloves. Again, this fight is July 20th and will be streamed live on Netflix. Former heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder is back in the ring this summer against the Big Bang's Zhilei Zhang. It's the feature bout on the Queensberry Matchroom 5-on-5 card. But it looks like the Bronze Bomber has another fight set following June 1st. It is reported that Wilder will face Jarrett Anderson on August 3rd in LA if he's ready following the Zhang fight. The fight will feature on the first Saudi card outside the kingdom, which is headlined by Terence Crawford's debut at 154 against WBA champion Israel Madrimov. This would be Anderson's first big name at heavyweight, and for Wilder, this would be the 2nd straight big puncher he would fight this year. We will just have to wait and see what happens on June 1st. Boxing's biggest showman today is back in action next month. It is reported that Ben Whitaker will return to the ring and fight Ezra Aranyenka on the undercard of the Chris Billam-Smith and Richard Riakporhe rematch. Now, this fight is happening June 15th over in the UK. Derrick James and Errol Spence Jr. has been one of the most notorious fighter-coach combos in modern boxing. The duo went on an unbeaten run, winning 3 of the major 4 world titles at welterweight before Spence lost to Terence Crawford last summer. But it looks like we will no longer see them together due to legal battles. On April 17th, James filed a lawsuit against the former unified world champion and is seeking $5 million worth of damages. That same day, Spence filed a countersuit. The suit stems obviously from money. I mean, since 2012, James and Spence have allegedly worked under a handshake deal that would pay the trainer 10% of Spence's purse. For the Crawford fight, Spence earned a career-high $25 million. However, Derek James says he only received $350,000, which is only 10% of the $3.5 million guaranteed purse listed on the bout agreement. Along with that, James estimates that he's owed almost $2.9 million in underpayment for Spence's last 4 fights. Whatever happens in this legal battle, it definitely looks like Errol Spence will have a new trainer, and the relationship between him and Derek James is now forever strained. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the championship round. We're ranting about the biggest topic in the past week in boxing. And this week, it is no surprise who we're talking about. It's Ryan Garcia. So, as we know up to this point, Ryan Garcia has tested positive a few weeks after his fight against Devin Haney. The drug he tested positive for is ostarine, which is a banned substance. Not only that, but it is reported that his pre-fight and post-fight drug tests both popped for the drug. It was only 2 weeks ago where we were singing Ryan Garcia's praises, becoming the first person to ever beat Devin Haney and putting on a Fight of the Year contender in the process. Garcia's stock was at an all-time high, and questions were finally answered on whether or not Ryan was trolling ahead of his fight. But we should have known that there was not going to be a satisfying conclusion to this saga. First, let's talk about the drug Ryan popped for. Ostarine is a SARM. It works to help muscle growth and speed up muscle recovery. So in essence, it helps the body recover faster, especially during training camp and weight cutting. Now, Garcia claims that he did not take the drug and that he's being set up. But even if that's the case, let's just talk about this in a boxing sense. Even if Ryan Garcia can beat the allegations and prove he didn't take the drug, he will never be able to convince the public that he is a clean fighter. The damage is already done. And for Devin Haney, not only does this loss lose credibility, but it could even be overturned. His confidence is most likely back, knowing that he potentially fought someone who was cheating. This situation is ugly, not only for Ryan Garcia, but for boxing in general, because it seemed like the sport was heading in the right direction, with the best fighting the best, bringing back that old spirit of the sweet science. With this news, though, it could do possibly irreparable damage to the sport. Fighters could be more hesitant to fight one another. More rehydration clauses could be administered. Ducking could happen altogether. This news undoubtedly pushed boxing back a few steps. And ultimately, it may take time for the sport to recover. Guys, that is all the time we have for fights today. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We're going to have videos every Monday. I know we took a couple weeks off, but we're back at it. I was a little sick, but it's okay. And listen, this summer is going to be a summer full of jam-packed fights in boxing, so be sure to stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching, though. I'm Elias Blanco, and I'm out.